So the idea behind stage commitment and dilution can be summarized in a very simple example that I use with my MBA students. And the example has to do with a balance sheet. The balance sheet basically summarizes the total value of a given enterprise at a point in time. And so I'm going to use this in a kind of a hypothetical way to talk about each of you and your value. It may seem a little impersonal. I apologize in advance. But I think it will get across the point that I'm getting at with regard to the stage commitment. So I want to imagine a scientist, Susan, who's developed a really interesting discovery in the laboratory. And she thinks that this has commercial potential for a particular disease. So at the point that Susan has done the research, her balance sheet looks like this. On the left-hand side, the asset is the idea. It's just an idea. It's in her head. It's not even written up on a paper. It's just literally an idea that came to her one night. And so the value of the company, what I call Susan, is just the idea. So if you think about equity, there's only one equity holder right now. It's Susan. She owns the entire company, which is herself, and the idea that she has in her mind. And let's suppose that the value of the idea is V0. I don't know what it is, but it's some number V0, OK? In order to take that idea and turn it into something practical, Susan has to do stuff with it, right? What do we do here in the university once we have an idea? Well, the first thing we do is that we, anybody? Publish a paper?
Disclosure to TLO?
Exactly, thank you. So most scientists would say, the first thing I want to do is write a paper and publish it. No, do not do that, because if you publish it in the public domain, then there are no longer any property rights attached to the idea. It is out in the public. And for certain things, that's perfectly appropriate. Basic science should be shared by everybody. But if you want businesses to put money to work, you need to give them something in return. And what typically we give them in return is property rights. And in order to give it to them, you have to have it to begin with. So first thing Susan does is that she files a disclosure with the Technology Licensing Office, and a patent is applied for. Now, that takes money, time, expertise, and effort. And if Susan doesn't have all of those things, she needs to work with somebody else to do that. And in this case, if you happen to be here at MIT, we've got a wonderful technology licensing office that knows how to do all of this stuff and will do it for you. Not for free. There's a catch. And the catch is that if you work here at MIT, then you've signed an employment agreement that says when you come up with discoveries using research and resources from MIT, then actually MIT owns that property. Now, that sounds a lot more rapacious than it is, because MIT is not in the business of stealing your ideas and profiting from them. They want to help you. And so the deal at MIT is that if MIT patents an idea of yours, first of all, your name goes on the patent. MIT owns the patent, but MIT promises in writing that whatever they earn, whatever royalties they earn from that patent, you get a third. Your department gets a third, and MIT gets a third. If you ask around to colleagues at other universities, I think you'll find that's one of the most generous deals to the faculty among most universities that I know of. And so you can be sure that if you have an idea, MIT will partner with you to turn that idea into something that's commercial, but it takes time, effort, money, and expertise, and MIT will do that for you. But now, in terms of who owns the idea, it's not just Susan. It's now Susan and MIT. You've now got a partner. And that's important because that means that it's not as easy to start up a business. You can't just go off and, even if you could raise the money, do it yourself, because if you need this patent, you need MIT to agree to it. So for those of you who are interested in this process, I would urge you to spend a little bit of time learning about the TLO and getting to know the people in the Technology Licensing Office. They're great people, but you do need to develop a bit of a personal relationship with them. OK, so now we've got an idea and a patent. It turns out that now the company is not worth V0. It's changed. It's a different entity. It's now worth V1. Hopefully V1 is bigger than V0. And you've created value. Susan has created value because now businesses, venture capitalists can look at this and say, wow, that's really interesting. That's not just an idea. That's an idea that's got some legal protection and exclusivity around it. So that's the next stage beyond the idea. And then the third stage is now we get some serious money to take the idea and the patent and to build a company around it. And that's the venture capitalist. The venture capitalist will look at this, talk to MIT's technology licensing office and say, I like this one, and that one. I don't like that one, so I'll take these three, thank you very much. And will propose some terms by which they set up a company, license the technology from MIT, and hire the relevant people, and put in the expertise, and serve on the board of directorships. All of these things a venture capitalist will do to take the idea out of the university and into commercial practice. But that now takes even more money. And now Susan, who started with just an idea, owns a much smaller fraction of a much, much bigger pie. And the key challenge in all of this is to manage this process. So this is the process that I want to spend most of my time on and to make sure that all of you are comfortable with. It's the process by which you go from V0 to V1 to V2, and hopefully what you're doing along the way is creating value. You want these numbers to be getting bigger each time around, okay? So I want to now turn to the last perspective that I'm going to talk about. I want to now focus on your perspective, the perspective of the entrepreneur. So I've talked to you about dilution. You know from the venture capitalist perspective what it is that they're trying to solve. They want to invest in something that they think will succeed. So they need to have a certain set of accomplishments before they're willing to do that. From your perspective, though, it turns out that staged capital and dilution is also a good thing in certain circumstances. So suppose you're trying to raise $8 million for a company. That's what it will cost based upon lab equipment and clinical trial or preclinical animal models, whatever it is. You've figured out that the whole thing, in order for you to get to a proof of concept, is $8 million. If it turns out that the value of your company initially is $10 million, and let's not worry about where we get that number from, but let's say the value of your company right now is $10 million. If you want to raise $8 million, you've got to sell 80% of your company to somebody. So you started with owning 100%, and now all of a sudden, in order to raise the capital of $8 million, you now only own 20%. You've diluted yourself. And dilution matters in a number of different respects, not just from the economic perspective, but from the control perspective. If you fall below 51%, it's no longer your company. You are now working for somebody else's company. And for a number of entrepreneurs, that's very difficult to deal with because they want to be in control. But in fact, in biotech, it's almost impossible for entrepreneurs to keep control of the firm because of the large dollars that are needed for this. So that's a challenge. If you raise $8 million right away, you lose control of the company. But there's another way to do this. So instead of taking the money up front, what if instead you don't need the $8 million right away? What if you only needed $2 million now and $6 million later? Well, if you needed $2 million now, you can wait and build up the company for a little bit of time. And if you only need the $6 million at this point in time when the company is worth much more, now you give up much less. Instead of giving up 80%, the way that I've drawn it, you're only giving up something like 50%. And so by staging the capital commitments, by waiting and not taking all the capital up front, you're actually helping yourself maintain equity ownership. And in some cases, you can actually even maintain a certain degree of control. I think that's pretty obvious once you see it laid out this way. So what's the downside of this? Well, let me tell you, there's a very important downside in biotech. The downside in biotech is what happens if by the time you're ready for your $6 million, by this time, what happens if that $6 million is not ready for you? What if you can't get the $6 million when you need it? That's a problem. It's a problem because in biotech, when you start something and you stop in the middle, you end up destroying a lot of value because a lot of the value is tied up in the people. And if you take a 6-month or 1-year hiatus where you don't pay your employees or your partners, a number of them are going to need to leave. They've got to feed their families. And so they cannot take a 1-year break from getting paid. So this kind of interruption is incredibly important to deal with up front. You need to anticipate the potential for capital markets to not be ready when you are in order to get the capital that you need. And you need to plan for that. So the biggest challenge in biotech, and I think the biggest mistakes that I've seen in my outsider's capacity in looking at and talking to a number of biotech entrepreneurs, the biggest mistake is that you all want to get started. You're really excited. You're super confident. There's lots of money around. And you take the money that's available to you now, but you don't take as much money as you need, thinking either I want to get started and I don't want to keep doing fundraising, or you're thinking I want to preserve my ownership and control and I don't want to dilute myself unnecessarily, so you don't take enough capital. And biotech companies that start up with insufficient capital, they have a much higher chance of failing because you cannot anticipate what financial markets are going to look like 2 years from now. You know, professional investors can't even figure that out. Warren Buffett wasn't able to predict the financial crisis, so we're not going to be able to either. And that's an issue that I'm going to come back to in just a few minutes.